Like, I'm an addict. I'm an alcoholic. Like, I know for sure that I want to drink and I want to get high. I don't know if I want to get sober, but I know I can't keep living this way.
Yeah.
And so you have to be willing to do something different. I think that's where I was. I was like, I'm willing to do something different because I knew.
What's called?
So our business is called Cotinga Free Spirits.
Okay. And you're doing that with?
Oh, man. Ashley Olsen, Byron Williams, my two
Right.
best friends.
Byron cracks me up.
He's a mess, man. He's our wild card. You got to love him.
He and I have never even really, like, we just see each other at tap and stuff like that. But we always make it a point to, like, say hello, hug, and all that stuff.
I'm sure he gives you shit, too. Like, he has to.
That's what I like.
Yeah.
That's what I like.
That's
Anybody that talks shit, you're my people.
Yeah.
So I like it a lot. So appreciate you coming down and getting on. We've been trying to do this for a while.
Thanks. You were texting me at 3:30 a.m. Like, let's go. Good morning. Are you ready?
I had to make sure you woke up. So good message to get
sleeping, Sean.
So badass in the Austin recovery community. I've been waiting a while to sit down and talk to you. And so
Thank you.
if you would, if you could just kind of paint a picture, but like, what was addiction like for you? What was rock bottom like for you? Where were you at? What were you doing? What did it look like, smell like, all the things?
Man, and I know we had just talked about this briefly, but rock bottom, I feel like there's two sides to the coin, right? I've been at rock bottom before where I've lost everything in my meth addiction. I was sent by the courts to Dallas to a state-funded treatment facility for a year, living off food stamps, had absolutely nothing. But I think it's more important to touch on like my last rock bottom that got me sober. And it's interesting because I've always, like, before my addiction, I was always like extremely motivated, right? And so I'd ebb and flow through my addiction. I'd hit rock bottom where it looked like I had nothing externally. And then this last time, before I got sober, I was dancing for the Austin Spurs. I was in school for nursing. I was trying to manage my life. And I was just drinking and using drugs on the weekends. And I say just, but that's what I do. I would fill my schedule with so much responsibility that my addiction had to be at bay temporarily.
Okay.
But
were you high functioning throughout your entire addiction or no?
No. Meth, like, if there's somebody who's smoking meth that's high functioning, like, I literally have no idea how they do it.
Isn't it funny? I feel like that is the most common thread with meth addicts is when they're first, like, I get so much done on meth. I'm like, I've never met one of y'all that gets shit done.
You might think you get stuff done.
Anybody that says they'll be there in 10 minutes to drop your meth off, you're waiting a minimum of 3 hours. Like, that shit takes forever. But
you're gonna tweak your time.
Yeah, for sure.
No, but this last time, it's funny. I was actually dating my son's father at the time, and I wasn't sober, right? And I met him in the rooms. I was like trying to get sober, but like managing my life enough to kind of trick my mind into being like, I'm okay, I don't need this yet.
Right.
But there was one moment that sticks with me, and it was I was walking past his room, and he was like on his daily principles doing prayer and meditation, and I saw him sitting next to his bed, and the light was like hitting him perfectly, and he was meditating, and there was like this absolute peace that I could tell that like he had inside, that I was like, there's no way in hell I'm ever going to be able to obtain that unless I get free of this, you know? And that was the moment that clicked for me, that I was like, I got to do something different. And for me, that was a rock bottom. It was like this internal feeling that there's always going to be turmoil. There's always going to be discomfort, no matter how hard I try to get there, if I don't get free of my addiction and allow room for God. And like, I saw that in him, and I was like, I want that.
Right. Damn.
And so it was more of like an internal rock bottom this last time than like an external rock bottom.
Man, what a blessing that is that you had somebody under your roof that was in recovery, that you got, like, that doesn't sound like an accident. You just walk through and just see this majestic, like, sounds like he was sitting there like glowing as he's sitting there praying and stuff like that. But I mean, what more of somebody you loved, you know what I mean, at the time, I'm sure, what more an attractive sight could you see that's going to pull you towards that?
Yeah.
Man, God. He
But
works like funny ways.
By the principles, and like they're just walking this earth, like,
yeah,
with God hand in hand, like that stuff's contagious, you know?
Yeah.
It's contagious. But yeah, and then I think it clicked for me then, but then I still, like, I think it was like a random Tuesday, I was drinking whiskey and snorting cocaine. And Brent came to pick me up, and he was like, you're not sober. Like I got sober to get this shit out of my life, and you're bringing the chaos back in. So you either get help or you hit the road. Essentially, he said it in a much like more tactful way, kind and loving way. But I was like, I just started crying, and I was like, okay, I'll get help. And he took me to I think a 10:30 p.m. meeting at Westlake, and I've been sober ever since.
Let's go.
Yeah,
Let's go. Man, that's when you, I don't know, it's different for everybody, but it sounds like you had that moment where you're like, I'm done. Like you just knew. Not saying it didn't take work to get there, you know what I mean? But
absolutely.
it was very much like me, like that for me.
Yeah.
When I got sober that last time, you know, I was in so much trouble with the law that I had like found hope all of a sudden, and like I knew I was like, I'm done. You know, not that it didn't continue to take work, and still today, you know, therapy, all this stuff to still continue to work at it, but I knew at that moment like drugs are no longer an option for me. I can't do this anymore. And God has played a huge part in doing all that. You know, I used to run around and try to give running the credit, or the woman who got me into running, or the treatment center, or speaking, and I would make all these things are like why I got sober. And it's like, no, at the end of the day, God put all those things into your life, and I know that now more than ever, for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
I will say I do want to touch on that because I have a lot of people that I help that are like, I don't know if I want to be sober. I'm like, that's fair.
Yeah.
Like, I'm an addict. I'm an alcoholic. Like, I know for sure that I want to drink and I want to get high. I don't know if I want to get sober, but I know I can't keep living this way.
Yeah.
And so you have to be willing to do something different. I think that's where I was. I was like, I'm willing to do something different because I knew I was never going to be the woman that God wanted me to be if I was just maintaining my life.
right.
And I wasn't going to thrive in the way that I wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, it takes going through that and putting yourself out there for other people to see that, to see what you're going through and identify with it, and then come and talk to you about things like that, or even to get that first notion of like, hey, maybe this isn't my way of life. And so that's big. There's not a lot of people that are willing to, you know, put themselves out there to do that. So the fact that you are is great. Within you're a mother,
Yeah.
right? Were you a mother pre-sobriety, post-sobriety?
Post-sobriety.
Post-sobriety.
So I had a few years when I got pregnant with Asher. And we actually have, it's funny, we have the same birthday. August 11th, isn't that
You and your
crazy?
son have the same birthday?
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Really?
Yeah.
What a birthday present.
I know. He was supposed to be born August 3rd, and then he was just like, I'm just going to cook a little bit longer. And so it was kind of a toss-up because Brent's sister is August 10th. I'm August 11th, so is he going to be, share a birthday with his aunt or his mom? But yeah, so.
So what has it been like for you, you know, as a male? I have no idea. I don't have kids, but what has it been like being a mother, a single mother, I imagine, for a time doing all this, and all that? What has that been like?
Man, it is like the most profound experience I've ever had in my life.
Really?
Besides getting sober. They're like hand in hand, you know.
Being a mom?
In a different way, yeah. It's the most beautiful thing, and I would never change it for the world, and it's also the most challenging thing.
Yeah.
It's because it's funny. It's like right when you get your mental health and everything stable, then your kid loses his shit. And then right when he gets better, like you lose your shit. And it's like this back and forth. And your kid, like you care almost like just as much, if not more, for him than yourself. I mean, that's kind of how it feels, you know? And so watching him like develop through the years and walk through life and have to overcome like certain challenges, and it's the coolest thing to witness. And like you also have to help him navigate that, and then also allow him to experience consequences. And I think that's probably the most challenging thing about motherhood is like allowing your kid to experience consequences.
That's big. I want to touch on that in a second, but your story, your situation, all that, like I identify with so much because my dad left when I was 2. I grew up with a single mother. She was going to school. You know what I mean? I'd sit in the back of her classrooms as she was going to school. I remember laying in bed, hearing her cry as she's up on her computer because we're all alone and stuff like that. So I know firsthand what it's like to be with that mom and to know that that mom loves me more than herself. But I always thought I understood that love or what I put my family through. But until I actually saw the documentary and my story and hear them say the words, I didn't truly know. And so there's this one time I had come home from Iraq. I got locked up while I was on leave in the military, heroin possession. It was her birthday when I got locked up. I had to call her at 3 a.m. to try to get bailed out and everything. And that next morning, she came, picks me up from jail, takes me, we're driving down the road. I'm thinking we're going home. I can't wait to get home and just smoke a cigarette. and she pulls into a McDonald's, and I'm like, Mom, what are you doing? And she looked over at me with tears in her eyes, and she goes, I figured you were hungry.
Mm.
And my heart sank to my feet, because it's like, I just ruined this woman's birthday. I've embarrassed her in front of the whole family. I just got locked up. I'm supposed to be at home and come home, military fucking hero, all this shit. He's in Iraq. She wanted to dote on me and show me off to everybody. And here I fucked all that up. And her first thought was to pull in and get me food. And it's like, damn, like only a mother's love right there.
Yeah.
But you brought up a very good point that I want to touch on, because it drives me kind of mad. And you were talking about allowing your son to feel the consequences. And so working in the recovery community, I'm constantly around young men, young women who's been in treatment multiple times. They've been in trouble, but they may come from means, and mom and dad don't even let them see the inside of a holding cell, let alone a jail cell or a prison cell. They don't even let them dip their toe in the pool, let alone ever hit the deep end. And so if you don't ever feel the uncomfortability of these consequences, how are you ever going to learn your lesson? Because I know, speaking as an addict, any trouble I ever got out of, I never learned from. The trouble where I actually had to serve the time or fucking do that, that's the shit that still hits. Like, don't want to do that again. And so what's that like for you, having the experience that you have, being an addict, being in recovery and all that stuff, and then now having this little person where you don't want them to go down that route, but you also need to like help them make their own, or let them make their own decisions?
Well, I think one thing that my mom's done a lot right. Don't get me wrong. I love my mom. She's amazing. She allowed me to experience consequences. I mean, I got sober fairly young at 24. I actually went to jail for a month because of my mom. My mom turned me in.
Gangster. Gangster.
She's like, you need a drug tester. She's going to test dirty for meth. And so my probation officer showed up at my house, or the house I was staying at, took me to the office, drug tested me. I got a voicemail from the court system on Sunday night, like, you need to be at court on Monday. They arrested me in court and threw me in for a month. And my mom wanted them to keep me longer.
But you just said the key though. You got sober at 24.
Yes.
Why? Because mom let you suffer consequences.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So when I went to jail, that ended my bout with meth. And I ended up going to treatment at the state-funded place for a year. And I luckily never went back to meth. I relapsed after that, and I did other stuff. But that was the one that definitely took me down the fastest. And so, like, I definitely, like, my mom was my savior 100%, and the judge and like all the people in the court system. But I think like, we work with families all the time that don't allow their children to have consequences. Like, you have to, like, I have to allow Asher. Like, I'll give you an example, but I'm also very honest and open with Asher, and I don't turn it into a punishment. So for example, I've caught Asher in a handful of lies over the years, mostly about candy. Like, he'll steal candy, right? And I'll find a wrapper underneath the bed or behind a vase in the living room. And I'll ask him about it, and I'm like, I didn't do it. And I'm like, Asher, look, at the end of the day, you're not going to get in trouble with me for lying, but you have to, how do you feel about yourself? And so I always ask him, how do you feel about yourself when you look your mom in the eye and you're lying? And I tell
well, if your mom says it to you, that hits.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And so I try to always make it, because I feel like the world teaches us to act a certain way for everyone else's benefit, so we can appease everyone else. But I want Asher to be a person of integrity because he knows it's the right thing for him, not because for anyone else.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's really important for me to have that conversation with him and just, like, keep that open dialogue. And I always tell him, too, I'm like, Asher, if you look at me and you lie to me, but then you come back 5 minutes later and you say, hey, Mom, I'm sorry, like, I lied to you, I will never be mad. Like, that is the most courageous thing that you can do when you know you've done wrong, and then you can turn around and admit that you've done wrong and make that right. Like, I'm all about that. Like, I promise you will not get in trouble.
Right. That's real teaching right there. That's really teaching your son. That's so much more effective. Like, you saying that's so much more effective for somebody like me, as opposed to don't lie. Like,
it's bad.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not listening to that shit. But if you tell me, oh, wait a minute, I did do this, but if I come to my mom You know what I mean? Now all of a sudden we have a whole different dynamic with that.
Yeah.
That's
So I
awesome.
try to create a space that he can trust our relationship. Doesn't mean that like if he doesn't do something wrong, like there's not going to be consequences.
Right.
But it does allow that space for him to be honest with me. And I think that's really important because I know I hid a lot from my parents, but I came from the generation, or my parents came from the generation where you do something wrong and you're punished for it. You do something wrong and you're punished for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I walked around half my life scared I'm going to get in trouble all the time. All the time. Everything was just to try to stay out of trouble.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But nothing was taught. It's because, like, how do you feel about yourself when you take those actions,
Yeah.
So
I heard a very interesting thing recently. It was talking about how, just the way parents are programmed or the way a mother's programmed. Like, you are programmed for your child to be safe. You're not programmed for them to be happy. You're programmed to be safe and okay. And that's all correct me if I'm wrong. But so as children start to get older and they get into school and all that stuff, as a mother or a father, I can go back to that time and I can remember my mom sitting there. She wanted me so hard to get into telecommunications. I still to this day, I don't even know what that is. Still to this day, I don't know what it is. But she's like, you need to go to school. You need to get in telecommunications and all that. School was not in the...
Does a podcast count?
I got to ask her. I
Honestly don't know what it is.
I took the long road to get here, but but at no time did she ever like, what do you love to do? What are your interests? What are you passionate about, like that, right? And so she wants me to be financially okay, you know what I mean, taking care of all that. She doesn't care about happiness, which she does, you know what I mean, but that's just not how she's programmed. Yeah. And so I just found that fascinating where it's like, man, like you think about, I know people, it's their dad was a lawyer, so they became a lawyer. And, is that necessarily what they really wanted to do? Are they going to be happy now? Now they make a bunch of money, but, we know money doesn't really buy happiness. And so, but it would be difficult. I just find it interesting because it would be difficult for me firsthand knowing about like leaning into a passion, doing what you love. You know what I mean? That's what I get to do now. But it would still be hard for me to like, what if your son's like, I can remember being in second grade and I asked my mom if I could be a wrestler when I grew up. I wanted to be a WWE wrestler more than anything. And I was sitting there with my WWF magazine in the car and I looked over and I said, Mom, can I be a wrestler when I grow up? And she was like, honey, as long as you go to college, you can be whatever you want to be. And I'm like, oh, she said yes. She said yes. But it was still in there, like, you got to go to school.
Yeah. That's a constant need for your parents' approval.
Yeah. Yeah. She wasn't definitely nurturing my wrestling career at any time.
It's hard. Yeah. Asher wants to be a YouTuber. So I have mixed feelings about it, but I try not to let it show.
Come hang out.
I want to. Yeah, exactly.
But
he wants to like play video games.
See, that's
on YouTube. And I'm just like, oh, there's so much other cool stuff you could do.
They're getting money though.
I know.
They're getting money.
And he's very entertaining. He's like very boisterous and joyous and expressive.
That's what you need.
Man, his energy is contagious.
So then maybe that's his pocket.
Man, it's really kind of crazy. And I don't even want to say it out loud, but sometimes you can see the addict behaviors from like a really early age. And Asher has that like two sides to him, right?
Really?
He's like very joyous and infectious and he makes friends easily. But then he has like this angry side where he's very angry. And I don't know, like just trying to help him navigate all of it.
Get him into jiu-jitsu. Get him into jiu-jitsu.
He is in jiu-jitsu. He started 8 months ago.
Good.
He has a tournament in 2 weeks.
Let's go.
Those things are wild.
Yeah.
Just kids beating each other up and all the parents.
Yeah, but wait till you see how that shit calms him down, because when he shows up to school, he knows he can strangle any of those kids if he has to. He doesn't care about a bully or anything.
Every day he wants to try to put me in a headlock or armbar or Gamora, I think it's called. Is it Kimura?
Kimura, yeah.
Kimura with a K?
Yeah.
Oh. It's amazing. I mean, it's really helped him regulate his emotions.
I bet.
Yeah.
I would recommend any parent put their kid in the martial arts, especially jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, the last tournament he did, he got really emotional, and let his emotions get the best of him, and almost kind of gave up in a sense.
Really?
And so,
learning lesson.
Yeah, no, it's hard to watch your kid do that, but it's like going back to like having those natural consequences. Okay, but then like talking through it. Okay, so you let your emotions get the best of you, and you essentially gave up. So let's learn how to help you navigate those emotions so that next time that happens, you still have control over the outcome or, of yourself,
Right.
essentially.
What do you think? So you've been in the recovery game a while, you've worked in the industry a while and all that stuff. What do you think the biggest obstacles are for women in recovery?
Ooh.
Whether they face it today or it always has been, that makes it different from like what a guy's up against.
Well, like a couple of things I think we can use longer than you guys. Because no offense, we use you guys in our addiction, and
I'm glad you're saying it. I'm glad you're saying it and not me.
so that makes it a little harder when you still have resources to.
I just saw this girl speaking, and she was talking about she hit her boyfriend up, and they were both sober, and she told him, she's like, she was flying in somewhere, and she was like, hey, I need you to pick up dope, be at the airport, meet me with the dope and all that. And he's like, I'm not doing it. And she's like, fine, I'll just call another guy. And so then he ran and got it, and I was like, see, they got us. They got us like that.
Y'all are easy to manipulate. I'm sorry.
No.
I'm just gonna say it. He's just shaking his
God programmed us with a single track mind, dude.
You let your hormones get the best of you.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
And then something else I've noticed, and I'm glad that you brought this up because I want to talk about it, and I've even been guilty of it. What I notice when a man relapses, the men will rally around and like grab him. You're going to treatment, like a little bit more hands-on. What can we do to support you? I've noticed with women, it's a little bit more of like, I don't know how to explain, standoffish almost. Not that.
Other women being standoffish?
Yeah.
Really?
Not rallying around other women like we should.
Is it
because we're scared of how we're going to be perceived, I think. Or rejection,
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I never thought of it like that, but I would say you're absolutely right.
Uh-huh.
And oftentimes in the men's community, like, they chase after somebody that's like relapsed 12 times. Like, you can't force somebody to get sober that's not ready to get sober. And so like my mindset has changed on this a little bit over the years. Like, I'm not going to chase you down to get sober. If you want to get sober and you come to me, awesome. I'll go to the ends of the earth for you. But I'm not going to beg you to get sober. If you don't want to get sober, cool, go get high. I really hope you make it back. But if someone's just constantly doing that, they just need to have their own experience. There's nothing I'm going to do to change it. You're going to do to change it or anything. But so what do you think what's the answer to that? What will help women start to rally around each other and pull each other back?
I think having more honest and open conversations, first of all.
Yeah.
I think when you have a group of girls together, it can be challenging because at certain parts in the dynamic, people either feel left out or they're scared they're going to be left out. And if one person's relapsing, and what I've noticed is instead of figuring out how we can help that person, it becomes more of like this gossip thing. And it becomes toxic rather than healing and helpful. And so really making sure, like, what are our motives? Like, what are our motives when we're talking to each other about the person that's struggling? Is it to, be helpful and, like, actually genuinely figure out how we can help her? Or are we just, like, gossiping, So really looking for a solution and being transparent, like, whatever you're talking about with a friend to help that person, you should also be able to say to them.
Yeah. It's about, I keep going back to it, but so many problems in this world are, I'll speak from my life, but oftentimes where the problems are is where there's a lack of communication. And so, like, let me ask you a question. How do you feel about podcasts? How do you feel about people going on, sharing their experience, sharing their story? Because there is a mindset before of like anonymity. We don't talk about our stuff. We keep, attraction rather than promotion. In a way, obviously I'm not talking about AA, NA, anything like that. But as far as recovery, this is very much promotion. But to me, if we don't have those uncomfortable conversations, that's why there's stigmas around this shit.
Yeah.
Because we don't talk about it. And so until we talk about it and it just becomes commonplace, I was my family's biggest kept secret for years. I'm sure you were too. When people ask mom or dad how we're doing and we're not doing well and they know we're shooting meth or shooting heroin or whatever like that, they're not going to tell people that. And so they're fine. They're fine. But until we actually start talking about it and understanding it, it hits every family. There's not somebody out there that doesn't know somebody. And if you don't know somebody that's suffering from addiction, you do. You just don't know that
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
currently suffering. Everybody. And so we gotta start having those conversations. I don't know.
We have to. I see it all the time, like working in the hospital systems.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much stigma,
Yeah.
within the employees in the hospital systems, whether it's nurses, doctors, social workers. I mean, the addict is the last person on the list for them to create a discharge plan for.
Mm.
They prioritize, medical, which I understand, but then mental health primary, and then the addiction, and the addict is last.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a social worker tell me, let's just be honest, we don't need a program like yours or anyone like yours for anyone to get sober. Like, I've heard so many, and sure, like, I got sober this last time by going back to the rooms. Like, it's not impossible, that's for sure, but treatment programs help millions of people every day get their lives back. But there is such a stigma. And I think, too, just, like, part of that is just, like, the lack of education around it, the disease process. So when you get on here and then there's people like you, people like me who have, when I tell people I smoke, I used to have a meth addiction, was like living on food stamps and had a state-funded treatment facility for a year. They're like, there's no way, like they don't see it.
It's the best compliment I can get.
Yeah. Yeah. And so to show people that there's another side to this, people who are struggling in addiction, but also just as important, people who aren't familiar with this disease process, is just as important.
So you work in the industry. If you don't want to answer this, you don't have to. But just why is there so much less resources out here for women in recovery? There's less sober houses. There's less treatment centers, and why is it so much more expensive?
Like resources for women are
women's sober living is nearly double what it is for men's. Like, it's so much higher. Everything's so much higher.
That's a great question. I don't know. It's the same thing in the rooms. You go into a room and there's 10% women and 90% men.
Is it because you think families are more willing to shell out money for their daughter than they are their son?
I don't know. I really don't know that answer.
I've just always found it interesting.
Yeah.
You and me are the same. We got to get sober. Why does it cost you more to stay there than it costs me to stay there? That makes no sense.
I do think that there's more men that go through treatment.
Yeah.
And there's more, I don't know if there's necessarily more men that are addicts than women, but there's definitely, even in the treatment world, the men, residential census versus the female residential census is significantly higher usually.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I didn't know if you knew that or not.
Yeah.
How was your experience in state-funded treatment? That's where I got sober.
Did you?
Yep.
Yeah.
12 treatment centers. The bottom of the barrel one was the one I got what I needed at.
You know what? Honestly, there was such a sense of relief for me. Like, when I was in jail, and I was okay, so I was a picker. So I'm like 130.
Were you a picker?
Oh, I was.
Really?
I was like 100 pounds. I'm 130 now. I'm already little, but 100 pounds. I was skinny. I had scabs all over my face, scabs all over my arms.
Do you have pictures of this?
No.
Video?
I did not take any pictures, none. And I used to just like cake the makeup on. But then when you're in jail and you have to see the destruction that you've done to yourself for the first time, because there's no makeup, there's nothing to hide behind. It's eye-opening, and at the same time, it was so freeing.
Right.
It was like somebody put a stop to the chaos. And so when I was in state-funded treatment, I was genuinely, I think, just grateful to be there.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the only place that would take me. And I was at rock bottom. I had a little bit of hope, so I didn't necessarily care where I was at. But that's where I discovered running, and they rallied around me with that. But I remember all of our food we got was donation based. And so the biggest donor of our treatment center would be a bakery. And so here I am running, I'm like trying to get healthy. I'm like reading all these books on diet, but every time you walk past that lunchroom, all there is cakes, cookies, donuts, cupcakes, and all that shit. But yeah, well, I got what I needed there. You know what I mean? Like, it was, everything by that point was stripped away from me. And that was the point where I was just like willing to do whatever it took. And so it didn't matter what they were talking about in group or anything like that. I was just ready. I was a 6-month facility too, inpatient
Where at?
in Austin.
Which one?
A new entry.
What is it?
A new entry. It used to be called. It was the
Okay.
McCabe Center.
Anymore?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. They moved down on Dean Keaton, or like down past there, Weberville Road. But,
Oh yeah, Weberville Road.
yeah, over in the what's left of the what they call the hood in Austin. But yeah, I don't know. I got everything I needed there. I went to Scientology treatment. I went to 12-step treatment. I went to fucking military treatment. You name it. But a new entry is where I got what I needed.
Yeah, you can get sober anywhere.
That's
You know?
that's why I said it. It doesn't matter where you are. When you're ready, you're ready.
Yeah.
I just needed to get to that rock bottom moment. What did you get arrested for?
I got arrested for initially DWI.
Okay.
I was going down 6th Street the wrong way, so I drove like straight into the police blockade. And they were like, "Ma'am, this is a one-way street." And I was
On the loudspeaker?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I'm so lucky I didn't just drive straight through the barricade, into the people. Oh my God. But it was funny. Like I was trying to do my whole flirting with the cop thing, but I was I was a complete blackout. And I was like, oh, like hitting his shoulder. He's like, "Ma'am, don't touch me." And my lawyer looked at me. He's like, I can't defend this. Like, there's really nothing I can do for you. So that was like the initial arrest. And then the second one was when my mom got me arrested.
Really?
Yeah.
So how much was the most time you did?
The month. Yeah. The first time it was just a night.
So you actually made it to the back?
Yeah, actually, yeah. I went downtown and then they took me to Del Valley for the month.
How was your jail experience? They had to love you in there.
I mean, honestly,
Del Valley's a pretty chill jail to be in.
it is. Yeah. We played volleyball every day. We ate. We watched TV. I mean, it was kind of a break from life. I'm not going to lie. Like, I don't suggest anybody to go. There's other ways to, like, take a break from life. But
I remember I was coming back from TDC. I was coming back from prison. And so I had a bench warrant still in Bell County for a DUI. And so I wasn't getting released that day. They were just sending me to county. But then when I would get released from county, they'd give me time served. So I already knew I was going home after the weekend, but I just started to sit the weekend. And so they shipped me there and they put me in basically the pit, you know what I mean, where everybody that's just freshly being arrested has to come in. And so that feeling of when you first get arrested, where it's just like, fuck.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like everything is just like, fuck. Well, I'm sitting there knowing I'm about to get out of prison in 2 days. So I'm sitting there and I'm happy, hunky-dory, like talking to people and people are like looking at me. And then they wheeled out the food. Bell County had amazing food. They had chili dogs that day, I remember. And so I'm like sitting there grubbing because it's way better than the food at TDC. But everybody's sitting there in the holding thing. They're like, what the fuck is wrong with this dude? He's like all excited to be here in county, but I just knew I was going home. Yeah, that was my hopefully the last time I ever see one of those places.
Yeah,
but
same.
I used to be so delusional in my addiction. I would like glorify getting arrested or prison life. Like, I could fucking do time. I could do that shit. And then I started doing time.
And you're like, I don't want to do
this. This is not what this is. Ain't nothing cool about this.
So when I got arrested, they were like, you can do a month and you can get out and go to state-funded treatment, or you can do 3 months and be done. I was like, I just want to do my 3 months and like get out and smoke meth again. And then I did a month and I was like, I think I'm good. I'll go.
Really?
I'll go to treatment.
Yeah. When I went to prison for the first time, they offered me probation and I turned it down. Just because I'm listening to all these fucking knuckleheads and they're like, oh, well, if you're going to still get high, you're going to fail probation. You're still going to go anyways. Yeah, and I was like, oh, okay. It never even entered my mind of like, hey, let's get my shit together. I was like, no, I know I'm going to keep fucking up, but let me just go to prison for 2 years and then get out and continue to fuck up. But
just, there's no rationalization.
Right. Then when I got on probation and actually got my shit together, I was looking around, I was like, this shit's easy. Like, probation officers actually like talking to me. They know I'm telling the truth. They know I'm doing good stuff in the community. So I had a very different experience from probation when I actually took it and did the right shit and was like, oh, I was only listening to people who aren't handling their shit.
Yeah.
And that's why they were telling me not to do this. But what do you, do you still do meetings?
I do.
How are you able to separate working in the industry and then like recovery? Because it's hard.
It's very hard.
In my opinion.
It's very hard. The way that I look at recovery, because what I've seen throughout the years is people will burn themselves out, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're working in the industry, they're working their own sobriety, but kind of like what you said, it's very enmeshed. It's it's hard to separate. And then they start building resentment at people in the industry and resentment at people in recovery. And then they start separating themselves from the solution. And after a certain amount of time, whether that's a week, years, whatever, then they go back out. And so something that's always been important for me is to continue to work my own recovery. As far as like, sorry, can we edit that?
You're good.
I'm trying to think where I was going with that.
Separating recovery from the industry.
So what I was going to say is one thing that I have always known to be true for myself is like, I have to have my own recovery and it has to be my foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And like really separating the person from, it's like, you know, practicing principles before personalities, right? Because no matter where you go, you're going to grow resentment towards somebody somewhere, and to not allow that to separate me from the solution. So having that solid foundation, like my recovery is meant to be built on. So now I get to experience all sorts of things, whatever that looks like, whether that's like finding, you know, God while I'm hiking or in church or just yoga or whatever. But what I notice is people will replace it.
Mm-hmm.
They'll replace recovery and the solution with other things instead of keeping that as your foundation and building on top of it. But as far as separating it, I mean, it's hard, you know, because you'll see people that you work in the industry with at the meetings and they'll want to bring up work.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I was experiencing some burnout working in the industry and all that stuff, the business side of things. Like I always want to do businesses run a certain way, and then there's times I want to do what I feel's right and all that. But I went to it was not long ago, I popped into a meeting up north, and it was like a big wake up moment for me because I was like, oh, wait a minute. I was making the recovery industry my recovery, and here I'm sitting there getting resentful at all this. And then I went to this room, I was like, oh, there's nobody, like, I'm not resentful at recovery. I'm just maybe resentful at the industry for whatever reason. And so it's like, all right, I need to make sure these stay separated because it's not like I don't fuck with the recovery world. And so just keeping that healthy balance.
Yeah.
But it took a second for me to like wake up and realize that shit.
Man, that was me like mid-November, this past November. I was so burnt out. In December, I mean, I did what I could, but I wasn't like pounding the pavement and knocking down doors. I was like, I'm going to take a step back and just kind of reshift my focus on my family, on my recovery, and just not feel the gravity of it all. So I needed like a solid reset. You have to have a reset. And I'll tell you, the most fulfilled I've felt in this role, because I came from nursing, and nursing's very different, but business development, you can work and work, and there's always more work to be done. Mm-hmm. And for people like you and me who like don't have a stop button, like that can get unhealthy real quick.
Very.
And that's where I found myself. I had like the gas pedal to the floor all year long. I did amazing. I mean, I'm doing amazing in the role, but I burned myself out. And so this year, one of my like goals in this role is to spend more time with patients at bedside, because as a nurse, like there was never one day I was like, oh my God, I gotta go to my shift. I loved it. I love spending time with my patients. I love sitting bedside and connecting with them. And I have a hard time in business development because so much of it is on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
It's texting, it's emailing, it's calling, it's, you know, you on the road by yourself, walking into hospitals, talking to people that don't want to talk to initially until you can build that trust and rapport. And nursing is like you're in a state of service. You're not on your phone. You're doing this. You're connecting. People want you around. You know, you do your shift, and when you're off, you're off. You can be present in whatever you're doing. So this last year for me, at least, was like a huge opportunity for growth, but like a much needed one. But it can be hard. You have to be able to learn to balance everything. But last week, I think I saw six patients in the hospital, and that was the most fulfilled I felt in my role, being with the person who's struggling.
Yeah, I feel that. Mm-hmm. It's funny. There's a wonderful woman named Taylor Conley. She's been on the podcast. She was one of the original episodes. She was in the top 5, but she came on and she's in recovery, but from eating disorder. She was one of the craziest transformations, eating disorder, that I've personally ever seen. But she was a nurse, and then she came over and started working in the recovery industry, kind of in the fitness space. And so when we started working together, one of the things I was trying to do would be to get her to go to these conferences with me, and I'd try to push her out there and promote what she was doing, because she was building a whole program around eating disorder within our community. So I'd try to push her out there, and she would go do these business development things, but she hated it. And I was like, what's the matter? Like, why don't you like this doing? She's like, I don't know. I just walk into there and like everybody's got their ties on and all this. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I was like, hold on. I was like, you need to stop feeling this way. I was like, you're college educated. I was like, those are all just the same drug addicts that were flying a sign on the corner 2 years ago. They just happen to be dressed nicer now. Like, stop thinking of that. Like, you're more qualified to be in that room than a lot of them are. And so I was just trying to set her sight. But it just made me think of that. What a different world that would be, going from direct patient care like you guys were doing, nursing, and then it's like, okay, now go into this room with all these guys with ties on and sit there and try to get everyone to notice you or talk about what you're doing. It would be very different.
Yeah, it was very different. But it was a growth that I needed to have, because something that I've always been so scared of is rejection.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that fear has kept me from doing a lot of things in life that I want to do.
Yeah.
And so being uncomfortable this last year and learning to not look at rejection necessarily in like that type of lens, but really just like an opportunity to build trust with somebody. Because I want like in my head, the expectation is I go into the hospital once and I like already have that trust, and then we have this streamlined flow of referrals. But when you get rejected 5 different times at the ER front desk, and then on the 6th time they let you go back, and then you have to have a conversation with the charge nurse 2 times, and then, you know, it's more of a mind game.
Yeah.
And it's a mind game I had to overcome, and like that self-doubt will creep in, and like this whole narrative of just that negative self-talk, it allows for that. And so this last year has been a journey of me learning to control that narrative and not letting these like delusional self-belief systems that aren't even true run the show.
Yeah.
And keep me from doing my job or keep me from doing things in life that I want.
Right. Yeah, 1,000%. You mentioned earlier you were an Austin Spurs dancer.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Do we got pictures of that?
Oh Lord, do you, like right now?
No, I mean, no, we're gonna need pictures, because we'll put these up in the episode. We'll put these up in the episode. I never knew that about you.
Yeah.
No.
It was a long time ago, but yeah.
You and I have spoke on the fitness stuff. What type of role did fitness play in your recovery or in your daily life now today?
Oh man, I always think about that. Well, actually, tennis probably had the most like impact on me.
Tennis.
So I grew up playing tennis. Went to the Junior Olympics they're called the Junior Olympics, but they were nationals. But I was talking with my mom about this the other day, because I'm like my son. Like, I would let my emotions run the show and get the best of me. And in tennis, when it's just you out on the court, you can't let that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I might be down and losing, and I'm having a little temper tantrum, and I'm hitting my tennis racket on the ground. But then at some point, if you don't get it together, you will lose.
Right.
And so I'd step out to the corner, and I remember I would like move my strings on my racket, and I'd just start talking to myself. Like, get it together, Alexis. Like, you're going to win. Like, you just have to have that like winner's mentality, where you have to shift your energy from feeling like out of control and letting your emotions run the show to you being like, I got this. Like, I'm the best fucking tennis player there ever lived. Like that, you have to have that narrative.
Right. You should have seen, just as you were doing that, you started cracking your knuckles. Like, you could tell you got intense.
It's a visceral feeling. It's like this, you elevate yourself to where you need to be to win, you know?
Yeah, you got to be telling yourself, I'm that motherfucker.
Exactly. And the second I would have that, my mom, she'd call me the comeback queen. She's like, you'd step on that court and it was like showtime, you know?
Let's go.
Yeah. And yeah, but that played... that because you build resiliency and you build grit.
Yes.
And it's a mindset that you have to have. And I think you have to have that mindset for many things in life, like overcoming addiction, overcoming grief, you know. Um,
If you're not out there challenging yourself, then you never know what you're made of.
yeah,
If you're not out there pushing your limits and trying to see what you could do, I mean, you could do it mentally, but physically is how I choose to do it. And being able to push past what other people are willing to push past,
mm-hmm.
somebody pushing me past what I'm willing to push past, and then constantly continuing to raise that bar. But if you don't do that, like, how are you ever going to know what you're made of? Or how are you ever going to know what happens when the going gets tough and in life, when you're down and you need to make a comeback? You don't know if you have that in you because you've
Yeah.
never done it before. So it's the fitness thing is such a bigger metaphor for me in my life and my recovery
1,000%.
than it is just going to work out or just going for a run. It's a metaphor for my entire life.
Yeah.
So what do you enjoy doing nowadays? I know you're a busy mom. You're
My God, I'm so busy right now.
badass BD person out here.
What do I
When you have
enjoy?
time, what would you enjoy doing physical wise?
I go to the gym a lot.
Okay.
I like to do ice baths, saunas, but as far as like fitness wise, sometimes I'll take dance classes. Those are fun. I want to do more of that. I miss it. There's a lot for me. There's a lot of freedom in it.
Yeah.
It's very expressive in its own way.
Mm-hmm.
Dance is very vulnerable. I mean, I don't find it vulnerable because I love it, but I think a lot of people do. But
I feel vulnerable as shit if I had to stand up and dance right now, so I can't imagine doing it in front of a group of people.
Oh yeah, I love it. So dance is one thing I definitely want to do more of. But spending time with my son, I spend a lot of time with all my family's here, so I spend a lot of time with them.
That's awesome.
I'm trying to think. What do I do? I hang out with my friends a lot. I mean, honestly, friends, family.
So when you go to the gym, though, what kind of style workouts you doing? You doing CrossFit, bodybuilding?
No, I do a lot of weight training.
Okay.
But I always start with cardio because it's kind of like what you said. Like I'll put on some good music and then I just go there and I get my body warmed up and ready for the weight training. But it's also, for me, it's very therapeutic. It's like all that built up stress from the day. It's just a release for me. So I'll do bike, Stairmaster, run just on the treadmill, and then I'll do weight training usually.
I know you just didn't say treadmill.
Oh my. I literally just had this conversation with my best friends. They were like, that is not how you say treadmill.
I hope everyone heard that at home.
Oh, no. They're going to give me such a hard time. They're like, it's treadmill. And I was like, yeah, but I'm from the South, so it's treadmill.
Treadmill. What else do you say like that?
Ooh, they were roasting me on another one the other day. I can't remember.
I had a can of Coke right there. What is it?
Soda.
Soda? Okay.
Yeah.
I've adopted soda, but I grew up pop.
Soda. I know that there's other words.
What's on top of your house?
A roof.
Okay, you don't say roof.
Roof.
Roof. What else is there? There's more of those. Can you think of anything off the top of your head?
Oh my! I can't believe you called me out about treadmill. That's funny. I literally just had this conversation with my two best friends.
The treadmill.
There's a lot of words I say. Yeah.
Just make them.
They're like it's French. It's just like.
I couldn't. Still to this day. Do you remember the company Cellular One?
Cellular One.
Yeah, I always said Cellular. Cellular One. Yeah, and it took me to get to my upper 30s.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep saying treadmill though.
No, you rock that shit. Yeah, don't change it for anybody. Be 100% you.
What do y'all call what does Crayola make? Like
the crayon?
Yeah.
Crayons.
Crayons?
For crown.
Crayons.
Crayons?
Crayons.
Yeah, crayons.
It was good. The treadmill. The treadmill can be bad for you. Be careful. It is. Bad for your knees.
Oh, okay.
You're
You're
used to the shock and jolters of the road.
No.
Good. You should. It's good for mental health. We got a bunch going with the Austin Marathon this year. You could have got in on it.
Lord, I don't know.
We're offering.
Always running to you.
We got a Team Iron Redemption for the Austin Marathon this year, coming up on February, I think it's 15th.
Who's going to be on the team?
I got 5 people from the recovery community. They're probably people you wouldn't know, but we're able to work with Austin Marathon this year, and then I'm going to be doing a giveaway coming up here pretty soon for a free bib for Austin Marathon, and we're doing a running shoe giveaway with Fleet Feet and all that stuff, but it's cool, man. The people at Austin Marathon are amazing. They played a huge part in when I originally got sober and get my story out there, so the fact that this could all kind of come full circle and I could be doing work with them now and shit like that is just very, very crazy. But,
when is it?
March 15th, or February 15th. Hold on. February 15th. I'm messing.
February 15th.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we got Sober South by on March 15th.
Okay.
I'm probably giving the wrong date for Austin Marathon. No, 13th, 14th, 15th. It's, yeah, the expo. We'll be at the expo. Come out and see us. But I just had to plug Austin Marathon real quick.
Do it.
You should come out and support.
I will come out and support.
Why don't you run the 5K?
I'll do that. Yeah, I think the what is that? 3.5 or
3 and change. It doesn't matter.
okay?
Just round it.
Around 3. I can do that.
What's the most you've ever run?
5.
You could do more.
Yeah.
I'm just saying you could.
I'm more of a sprinter than a long distance runner.
That's what everybody says. Or always something.
Well,
I was never a runner.
Everyone's a sprinter.
Are you a fast twitch muscle
Yeah.
person? Are you really?
Well, think about tennis. I mean, it's like
that more
sprinting, and
explosive?
there's a lot of it's more explosive. There's a lot of footwork.
Okay.
And I had asthma growing up. I still have asthma.
Oh, really?
So
No inhaler?
distance. I haven't inhaled.
Oh, you do? I've never seen you use it. Gangster. Like you get attacks where you're like, you gotta use it?
Well, not so much anymore. A lot of times people will kind of grow out of it as they grow
is that what happens?
older.
Yeah, because you don't really say it as much.
Because your windpipe gets bigger.
Is that you too? Oh, okay.
You have asthma too?
Look at you guys. 2 peas in a pod.
We're so cute.
Is there anything you want to talk about, plug before we get out of here? Where can people find you? Let's say they've heard your story. They've tuned into this episode. They heard about your rock bottom and everything you're doing. Number one, what would you tell that person that's listening and identifies your story if they're still suffering? And then number two, where can they find you if they wanted to reach out?
That number one, like first and foremost, there's always hope. I think that's really important to share that there is another side to this. And this journey isn't really about stopping drinking and drugging. It's really about learning to practice self-love and like what that looks like for you. And, you know, if they're at home by themselves and they just feel isolated and alone, that they need to reach out first and foremost and ask for help.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
One fun question before you go.
Okay.
Hypothetically speaking, you're walking out right now for the Women's UFC Championship of the World tonight, packed house. What's your walkout song?
Ooh, my walkout song? Oh.
That banger that just gets you ready to wreck shop.
Oh, I probably don't know. I'm like, okay, I'm one of those people, I'll sing every lyric to every song, but I can't tell you the name of it or who sings it.
Give me an artist. Who's that one artist that really gets your blood thumping?
Rage Against the Machines.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Rage Against the Machine. You heard it here. All right.
Yeah.
The way we like to wrap up the episode, everybody's heard a little bit of your story. They knew who Alexis is, but to let them know truly who you are. If you take a look in your camera, maybe throw out a couple I am statements.
Okay. I am vulnerable. I am courageous.